Born in the vibrant heart of Europe, Acolad began its journey to master the art of true connection. Not just in words, but in meaning. Imagine the scenario. A pharmaceutical giant navigates complex regulations to deliver a much-anticipated vaccine worldwide amid a global pandemic. A global entertainment powerhouse unveils a new animated series, taking over the hearts of children in every corner of the globe. A Parisian fashion company weaves its savoir-faire from the avenues of Paris to the vibrant streets of Tokyo and Seoul. Imagine trying to solve that puzzle. Lost in Translation is more than a quirky movie title. It's a business risk. In the world of tech and regulation, precision isn't just a goal, it's a necessity. That's where we come in. At Acolad, we know how to navigate these complexities. It's where our magic unfolds. We're like the Swiss Army knife of understanding. Versatile, reliable, and razor sharp. We are language alchemists, transforming content into messages that speak to hearts and minds across continents. We are the storytellers of the digital age, where every word is a step towards a more connected world. This is our commitment, to lead the charge in an industry revolutionized by artificial intelligence. At the forefront of innovation, we harmonize cutting-edge technology with the finesse of human creativity. Our story is not just about the words we translate or the content we create. It's about the connections we build and the horizons we expand. It's about empowering every organization we partner with to be confidently global and authentically local. So, here's to making the complex look simple, the regulated become manageable, and the global feel local. This is Acolad, content that empowers anywhere.
Hello. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome wherever in the world you are. Thank you for joining us today, and we're certainly glad to have you here. My name is Gary Palmer-Power, and I am the Global Head of Account Management here at Acolad Life Sciences, and I'll be the moderator for the next 60 minutes or so. So, here's a situation that I think most of us will recognize. Leadership teams across the world want AI, perhaps everywhere, but that also includes labeling. AI promises faster turnaround times, reduced costs, more languages, and many other benefits. But what's often missing from this request is how and why. But also, an interesting question, what and how are others doing it? As we know, labeling is regulated content. A version error or terminology slip isn't just a typo. It can become an audit problem, a rejected submission, a risk to patient safety. So how we deliver the benefits that we need to achieve, but how do we do so without taking on the risk? And is AI always the right answer? Today, this is what we're going to be addressing. Today is not about a vendor pitch, and it's also not generic AI changes everything kind of talk. What we're hoping to achieve is a practical conversation about what actually works in regulated labeling and what doesn't. And just as important, how do you know where you stand today and where to start? To know this, we'll be looking at a couple of things such as benchmarking, comparing your approach against that of your peers, perhaps even other industries, and seeing what your partners are doing right around the world. To explore this, I am joined by two panelists who have genuinely tackled this question. Laurie Johnson, who is the Director of Global Product Labeling at Beckman Coulter Diagnostics, faced a major internal problem, and instead of guessing whether she was on the right track, she went out and benchmarked with peers and with vendors. And this is one of the spines of today's session. I'm also joined by Richard Korn, who has spent more than 20 years in medical device labeling, including a stint of 7.5 years leading technical communications at Medtronic. He's seen a lot of transitions up close, what scales, what stalls, and why. So, Laurie and Richard, thank you very much for being here today. What we're going to cover first, we'll open the session by starting with a couple of polls so that we can get to see where the audience are at on your journey. Laurie will then move into talking to us about her benchmarking story, the trigger behind it, what she did, and what she learned. And then Laurie and Richard will get into the deep dive a little bit more in terms of what works, what doesn't, and no doubt we'll touch on important things such as version control, terminology, traceability, audit defensibility, and such. But what we really want you to be able to leave with today are two things. Firstly, a sense of where to start. Do you start with low volume, low risk content, build up towards high risk, high visibility content once you've earned confidence in the tools and technologies? And secondly, the idea of strategic partners. How can you work with strategic partners to learn what others are doing in the industry, what maybe some of your competitors are doing, and how can you perhaps answer the simple question of, am I doing the right thing or could I be doing it better? What are others doing? A couple of housekeeping rules before we get started. These sessions is hopefully built around you and what you can take away from it. So we will start with the live polls. So please keep an eye out for when those launch shortly and vote. There's no right or wrong answers. We just want to kind of see where the audience is at, and that will tailor how this conversation develops. But secondly, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in at any point, and we'll address them either throughout the webinar or towards the end. And yes, we're also recording this session just so that you're aware, so you can also play it back afterwards. So with that, I'd like to open up the first poll question. Please, Christina. So where is your organization currently at in terms of labeling today? Are you piloting? Are you in production? Where are you up to? I'll just give you a couple of moments to answer that question. Okay, so at the moment we have exploring. Anybody else? Okay, exploring is actually a really important topic that we will be discussing today. It's one of the key things that you could potentially also benefit from benchmarking with. So hold tight, and I'm sure that there will be some interesting information and takeaways to come from Laurie's story and also what Richard has to share. Shall we move on to the second poll? Okay, so the second poll, what is driving the pressure? What is driving the pressure to adopt AI or to change what you're currently doing? Is it centered around cost, headcount, languages, speed, or leadership? I'll just give a couple of minutes to see if we get any more answers for that. Speed and cost, very good. I think speed and cost will be, oh, okay, we're a couple of more votes. Cost has just increased. Cost is a driving force that a lot of us are experiencing at the moment, and in regulatory labeling and regulatory affairs in general, it's a very, very important one to consider. Because, of course, if anything goes wrong, if you're not set up successfully, then that can be very costly. So there's a balance there, which again we will discuss later on in this webinar. Okay, so then thirdly, let's move on to the final survey for the time being, which is how confident are you that you can tell which content is safe to move into an AI workflow and which isn't? So you're confident, you have some idea or are you completely new to this and have no current ideas? And again, I'll just give a couple of minutes for people to answer that question. Okay, so some idea. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. We'll come back to those during the webinar as well. But in the meantime, if I now, Laurie, hand over to you, if you could please share your story and the decision to benchmark before investing further. Thank you.
Sure. So my team has been exploring new tooling and adding AI to our content management and translation workflows for about the last 2.5 years. We spent a lot of time doing research, investigation, attending Local and reaching out to other vendor partners, learning what the landscape looks like and what our tool options were. We had a pretty legacy heavy environment, and we knew we needed to upgrade, and we wanted to make sure that we were kind of future proofing ourselves. And so we'd landed on a new workflow for our team, and we'd gone through our RFI, our RFP. We'd set up an initial schedule for implementation, and really driven that to a fairly good point where we had our pilot in line of sight and had an opportunity to discuss kind of expanding that out and whether what we were looking at might be of use to some other internal customers and business units. But we were really asked whether what we were doing was kind of gold standard, was what the rest of the company might be interested in, and how do we know? And so, how did we know? How do we talk about our content workflows, our localization workflows, our our ability to improve? And it's the same thing that the audience was talking about, right? How do we demonstrate that our ability to improve cost control and improve speed was not only good enough, but really kind of best in class, right? And so, we thankfully had made some strategic hires. We felt like we had good data points internally. And I'd had conversations with some folks that I knew from other industries, but we felt like we really needed to know within kind of med device and diagnostics what our peers might be doing. So this is the point when I really did start having conversations with with our vendors, kind of reaching out what else was going on in the industry, to the extent that our partners what could they share about what else was going on. And I, looked through my contacts and who I knew in LinkedIn who might be doing a similar type of work. And I did happen to, reach out to Richard, who I had worked with in the past. He and I had worked together at St. Jude, formerly St. Jude, now Abbott Diagnostics, a handful of years ago, and had a conversation about what his experiences were with localization, what he'd worked with, and what his workflows looked like, and where points of comparison were, whether what we were looking at doing was similar or dissimilar, and what I could basically take back to leadership and say, yes, these are the same things that we're talking about doing, or not.
So it's really interesting. So you you had run RFIs, you'd run RFPs, you'd gone to some industry events. I think you mentioned Lockworld just now.
Yep.
And there was still, what I'm hearing is there was still some level of uncertainty as to the right way forward. So was there a particular, were you looking for confirmation of an idea that you had? Was there a particular question that you found you couldn't answer despite having run all of those things that you still didn't feel comfortable answering? Or was there a particular trigger that made you think we need to maybe approach this from a different angle?
Really, the kind of the question, the pressure that we were getting, that we were trying to answer with the highest level of confidence was, what are our peers in med device and diagnostics doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's not necessarily what is everybody doing, but what are other companies just like us doing? And again, I think a lot of times, it's easier to see what maybe what tech companies are doing, or what's going on, kind of generically, right?
Mm-hmm.
What a localization workflow might look like, or what high level best practices might look like for content management. But sometimes, what a large consumer electronics company might be doing is not going to be appropriate for a company that's operating in a highly regulated environment. Those workflows are going to be very speed and cost centric.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we're not, but they're not going to have as many gates as we do, right? And the pressures are going to be quite different. So, we're really being asked to benchmark against peers.
Understandable. So, out of interest, was this also your first time benchmarking? Were you maybe a little bit nervous about going out and asking others what are you doing? Maybe what are you doing better than me? Or did you not have any concerns in terms of, because I could imagine that for some people that would be quite a vulnerable position to come from, right? Or how did you approach it, and what tips and tricks could you perhaps share with some of the members of the audience?
And I think there's definitely, I think, a level of vulnerability, right? And wanting to be open to getting feedback, but I think for all of us, there's things that we're probably doing that are better than some of our peers, and there are certainly learning opportunities for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
We can all improve on something that we're doing. I think within med device and diagnostics, we all operate within the spirit of continuous improvement.
Absolutely. Yeah. No.
So,
and before we maybe switch over to Richard in a moment, just one final quick question on this from me as well. When you went out there and you started to ask those questions and benchmark, were you met with any surprising comebacks? Did you learn something that you may perhaps, or did it reveal something that you perhaps weren't expecting?
I think it helped to confirm that we were definitely headed in the right direction. And I think one of the other things that it helped to confirm was the importance of, making sure that your underlying content is solid before you, start looking at ways to improve and add speed and add, AI into your localization workflows. If your content isn't clean, isn't solid, isn't consistent, then there's going to be challenges downstream, right?
Thank you. Yeah, and we will come back to that point in a moment as well. Richard, if I could bring you in to this one.
Yeah.
So,
Pretty
what do you
engaging
do when a
topic.
colleague, what do you do when a colleague such as Laurie comes to you and is asking for that kind of input and advice?
No, I mean, it's wonderful to have the collegial environment and to share your notes, and also to reconnect with former colleagues and friends from other organizations that you share, where you share a common history. I think that's kind of the dynamic within the med device, life sciences, med tech as a whole. I think at the end of the day, we're really serving our patients and clinicians, and if we can help one another to get to a better place, then that's really, I mean, it's a win-win. So to that end, I think that's not unique to this conversation. It's just the way that our industry operates. I would say, just for a moment, tying into what Laurie was alluding to, if I'm putting on a quality hat, I really want to look at content from the perspective of risk. What will lower the risk, and then that kind of helps to guide the conversation, and that's looking at other industries like tech, for instance. There are quality controls, and there's GDPR and all these other elements that are not, that are part of our industry as well. And there are certainly guardrails, but we have a special responsibility to ensure the safety of the individuals who are using our products. And so to that end, I think that's really important. If I'm looking at content specifically, I would have to look at the maturity of the organization, the labeling organization in particular. How much content is already structured in some format, maybe in a component content management system. If that's in place already, then I would look at what products are more stable, what sustaining products that where the content may not shift as much. When you talk about MPI, new products, and maybe content that's not in a centralized database, that's when it becomes more challenging. And I think AI accelerates everything. It automates what we do, but the core tenets of what we're working on, it's not any different really from all those years that many of us have been working on moving content into a centralized repository, using component content management or whatever tools. At the end of this whole process, though, the human component is the critical piece. We'll talk more about that, I know, in our discussions. But we're going to really delve into that. But the human component is key, because as much as you might use AI to automate the generation of content, you need at least one pair of eyes, if not more, looking at what's been generated in context and with the history of how these products interact, and maybe other components, safety related, for sure, and that pertains to the localization aspects as well.
So that actually ties really, it goes back to what you were saying at the start, right? That you want to look at content from a risk perspective. So that kind of is driving two questions in my mind. The first one would be, okay, so in kind of plain language, when we're looking at labeling, when we're looking at regulatory affairs in general, and if we are considering AI, where do you begin? What is the safest content and what you would consider to be suitable for AI versus what is the content that you would recommend people never go near when it comes to AI?
Well, I mean, I don't think so. AI is evolving so quickly. I think it's difficult to say that there's something that you would never have AI go near. But I would go back. So being consistent, like Laurie was mentioning, ensuring consistency in your content, that's really what it comes down to. You don't want AI to generate new phrases that are maybe not part of a glossary that you've developed, or that you've vetted. I think it's not unlike if you're migrating content into CCMS, same tenets. You want your metadata in place, you want to have content mapping, and then you can be more assured that that the content that's being generated by the AI is, if it's not identical to what one of your writers might have generated, or that a human being may have generated, it's closer, and then you can leverage the benefit of AI, because AI can search, in an instant, all of the different documents and really put together the pieces. It's really, for me, the missing piece from what we had for with component content management. It really ties in all of that. So I would say, if the short answer is maybe documents that are internal first. You may, in your organization, may have a Gen AI that's specific to the products that you use, and there may be some ad hoc usage. But also, I would look at the integration of AI into the tools that you already use. And there may be a seamless way to integrate AI without it intentionally saying, I'm using AI right now. So, and I know a lot of the technology already has this embedded, yeah. So that's my short answer.
Thank you, Richard. Laurie, I have in our notes from our previous discussions the expression "rubbish in, rubbish out," which we've discussed at some length. So I was just wondering, from your perspective and from the exercise that you ran and the benchmarking, when we're talking about AI, how much do you think the problem comes down to perhaps AI readiness versus what Richard was just talking about then, which is really making sure that you have this content foundation with structure, terminology, CCMS? What's your take on that?
Well, I think that, again, as Richard was saying, there's a lot of similarity to being ready to go into content management in general, being ready to leverage AI effectively. And that's making sure that you have clean content and it's well governed, right? And so in order to be able to leverage AI in an intentional way, you do really want to know the state of your content and make sure that it's prepared for whatever your intent is with AI, and whether that's leveraging AI for a productivity purpose, or you're using it in a translation workflow in some manner. So, as you said, rubbish in, rubbish out, you do need to make sure that it's in a known good state, ideally, before it becomes a part of a workflow that's leveraging AI. Having good terminology, having structure, as Richard said, having metadata defined and in place, and governance, right? So that what you're doing on a go forward basis. We've had a lot of discussions within my team about types of documents and content, and the level of risk and sensitivity for those documents, and whether they're appropriate to go through an AI leveraging workflow or not.
So it's thank you. So it's a really good point, and maybe a bit of a provocative question. So in the polls, a number of people had said that cost is obviously a driving force of introducing AI. But if we're talking about really investing in that foundation, that structure, whether that be CCMS, language assets, or your translation memories and glossaries, they can be very costly things to invest in. So I'm wondering if anyone on the call identifies kind of that weak foundation, therefore could amplify errors or that AI could make. then is there maybe a real case for some people to kind of repurpose the budget for AI into cleaning up that terminology, putting in place the solid foundations
Mhm.
as an initial step, and then maybe looking at AI in the future? And if so, how would you respond to pressure from a leadership team to kind of get AI now? I don't know, Richard, do you want to
I mean,
give that one a
I
go?
I think, yeah, so, not unlike, many other projects that involve legacy content in particular, or
Hmm.
content that's being taken from, one format to another. Say you're in design or FrameMaker and moving it into an XML-based platform. Yes, there is usually a project, at the beginning. I think one of the key areas, that we need to consider is what products will still be in place. First of all, is it worth touching that content? If it's stable and the products are actually going to be phased out, then you can cut out a bunch of content. But not as easy as it's not as easy as that, and maybe that's more of like a CCMS approach,
Hmm.
because sometimes that content may be relevant, and the AI search engine,
Yeah.
or what's integrated into your tools may need to make use of it. But that's one consideration. I would say, you know, um, repositioning the team, and at the same time looking at your content, and having a big project to assess how consistent the content is. Sure, that's an investment, and I think that's a valuable investment. But at the same time, the team needs to be retrained, um, placed into new roles that are focused on AI, and the quality aspects, because that's what makes it unique, I think, to our industry. Um, there is a reticence, there's sort of a reluctance to adopt new technology until it's been um, out there for a while. But a lot of
Yeah.
companies, this is the departure, I think, from that model. A lot of med tech companies are embracing AI in a big way. They're seeing the value of that, and the value of repositioning those team members who were formerly on, maybe operations or labeling, tech comm teams, localization teams, looking at them as becoming subject matter experts in AI.
Hmm.
And the other thing that I would say is, um, if your costs are going up initially, okay, there's an investment that needs to be made. But over time, there should be a model that ensures that you're leveraging the goodness of the AI, and that you don't have, say, maybe a full team of writers or localization professionals in the same way, that they are facilitating the work, that can be automated, and doing the work only human beings can do. And that's really the big challenge. That's where I think most organizations are going to face a big challenge.
Thank you, Richard. I think that brings us nicely on to, we have one more poll, which I think has already been opened, but just to draw the audience's attention to it. One final question when it comes to adopting new technologies or AI, changing workflow processes, whatever that may well be. Which of these worry you the most? Is it about version control? Is it about terminology drift, which Richard and Laurie were just talking about? Is it traceability, or maybe the ability to defend during audits? Okay, terminology drift has just popped up, as well as audit defense. We also, just to go back whilst we're waiting for maybe some more answers to come in there, I just wanted to take it back. What you were talking about then, Richard, in terms of repurposing resources and still keeping that human in the loop being a non-negotiable, particularly with higher risk content. So interesting, what does, if you like, meaningful human control actually look like in this process? Like where would it take place? Would you still keep it in say, pre-submission? Is it during audits? Is it throughout the whole process? What is your experience in?
Well, in my experience, any type of quality, sure, quality is useful at all stages in the life cycle of a piece of content. But upstream, if you can address those issues upstream, um, eliminate inconsistencies in content, also eliminate the inconsistencies in the translations that would follow. That's where I would say you can gain the most value. And also because AI is learning, if you allow AI to learn from clean content, it's not as muddled. It gives you more precise responses. Sure, the AI can learn as well in the same way that human beings can. I mean, not at that level, but it's got the capacity to weed out some of the rubbish or the garbage. But why not kind of help it along? And if you've got a team that's highly familiar with your products and the content, it may not just be within the traditional labeling organizations. It could be groups that that do your in-country review, or other teams that might have that could add some value to your larger data vetting project. I think that would be my take, that the upstream work is where you're going to gain the most value in the long run.
Thank you. And maybe just for awareness, we probably have about 10 minutes left or so before we'll move over into question and answers. So I'd just like to maybe bring the conversation back to the benchmarking piece that we were discussing before. So Laurie, from the benchmarking piece, we mentioned the ability to go and speak to your colleagues and peers, such as Richard. There's also then the possibility to speak to your vendors, as you mentioned earlier.
Sure.
And I'm just interested to see, did you get complementary information? Did you get conflicting information? How did the benchmark provide that level of clarity in terms of next steps for you?
So in general, we got fairly complementary information. We were looking for kind of the environment, the workflow that we're standing up is generally kind of gold standard, what the industry is using. That's fairly commonly what we found. We found a little bit of kind of different tool set, but the tools themselves were pretty much what we were using, right? So the specifics varied somewhat, which is what you would expect, right? To the vendors, the what TMS you're using, that type of thing, whether something is internally hosted versus externally supported by a vendor, that type of detail. But in general, the workflow that we were looking at was fairly common, right? Okay. And that's largely what we were looking to validate. Yeah. And so we did largely validate that across our industry, and that was a good finding, and it was again, it was just also really good to start having more of those conversations and to start making more of those connections, or in cases of folks that I talked to, like Richard, kind of reconnecting in some cases, right? So again, it's something that I think probably for myself, I could be doing more of, and having more of those points of connection, more of those conversations.
No, brilliant. And so in terms of, it's good that it was largely a validation or a confirmation of what you were doing, but just interested to hear, was there anything that came out of it that you've implemented that perhaps you wouldn't have done without AI, or has it helped you, without benchmarking, or has it helped you somehow internally to maybe align different teams in a way that wasn't the case prior to benchmarking?
Trying to think if there's, I think again, by and large, we got a lot of validation. I think we ended up with a much larger data set than we got through our RFI and RFP process, which was quite interesting because we did quite extensive research beforehand. But the industry and the playing field has changed quite rapidly.
Yeah.
So again, it was interesting research. We found out a lot about additional tool sets and additional vendors that we didn't have exposure to before. So yeah, good additional research for sure.
I just maybe want to mention one of the elephants in the room, perhaps. Of course, I come from the vendor side of things. We work with also maybe some of your competitors, and we can we see maybe what they're doing versus what you're doing. So, how did you find approaching the vendors? Was it a good vantage point for you? Were they also open to talking about what you're doing versus the vendors? Were they as open and forthcoming as maybe Richard was as a peer? Did you see any advantage of consulting them?
I think by and large, our vendors that we've worked with have been as open as they're able to be, given the NDAs and agreements that they have with various levels of with various clients and partners. So I know it's some of our vendors are able to disclose more than others. They've shared what they can, and I feel like that's been very helpful. And I think by and large we have pretty positive relationships with all of our vendors. So we've had good discussions about where we sit with regard to our tool sets, our productivity, and where we can make improvements. And I think they operate fairly transparently. So yeah, all positives. Great. And I would encourage, for folks who have not, and I know I've had some conversations with some of my peers who haven't kind of made that next level connection with their vendor partners to really to do that. It's been truly helpful in some of our transformation and helping us refine our processes internally too.
Great. Thank you. And maybe one last question to Richard before we look what the audience is asking. So from our notes, I also have the comment that companies can often diverge internally from business unit to business unit in terms of their approach to AI, readiness, what they're willing to do and not to do, perhaps also related to risk appetite. And from your experience, and have you ever used benchmarking to maybe expose those differences, or have you ever used benchmarking yourself in the same way that Laurie has?
I mean, I've used benchmarking many times in different scenarios. I think that there's quite a bit you can learn from your peers. And especially in this industry, I mean, it's more reassurance that what you're doing is sort of on the same path, because it tends to work out that way because with the state of technology, a lot of groups are looking at the same types of improvements, enhancements within the same time. It's kind of uncanny how that works. I would say with suppliers, for sure. For localization, for content management, some quality-related vendors as well. It gives some insight, very quickly. So as you mentioned, with the work that you do, you're going to see, the landscape of all these different groups, different labeling, tech comm teams. And kind of that can provide some insight as well without doing a ton of extra benchmarking. But I did want to delve a little bit more, just for a moment, into the piece about divergence within an organization. Some companies are not very large, so this wouldn't apply to them, but the ones that are larger or have had recent acquisitions, it's important to keep on track with the larger initiatives that you've undertaken. If it's AI driven and you're trying to incorporate that into your labeling, that doesn't mean that those newly acquired organizations would necessarily use that right away, but there is value in having those larger projects that then could maybe apply to new organizations at a later date. So I would say that I would encourage that. The other thing is that wherever you are in your AI journey, and it applies to all facets of labeling, but certainly for AI, I would jump in and experiment. And it's very easy to do. You could take low risk documents and work with them, maybe non-regulated files or internal documents, maybe documents that you just use for your team, and use those as case studies, like what worked, what didn't work. Encourage your team to experiment, like go into Gemini and Claude and ChatGPT and all these different AI options that your organization may allow you to look at, because I think that will spark ideas that are more relevant to your specific scenario and situation. The other element of this is, if you don't have infrastructure, say maybe you didn't work on CCMS in a meaningful way, or maybe not at all. Maybe you're all, your content is kind of in disparate locations and not centralized. This is an opportunity to kind of create some consistency and leapfrog ahead and not go through maybe all that pain that a lot of other organizations have gone through. And so, at the same time, I would say, if you've developed a robust CCMS, yes, you can leverage that. You can leverage the what you've done with content mapping and all the different facets of CCMS to guide you on the AI journey. But on the flip side, it's okay. I think sometimes people are a little bit, I don't know if afraid is the right word, but it's more about, like, do I want to invest my time in this technology right now, because I've got all these deadlines and all this work to do. So I would say at least a part of your team, the teams that are going to be repurposed and repositioned and retrained, that's an opportunity for them to kind of give some input and say, okay, yeah, I think this would really work well for us. And certainly, working with suppliers and vendors that you're already working with, and helping, and they can help you as well with what they know from their journeys.
That's great. No, thank you. So for the last 5 minutes or so, we'll answer some questions from the audience. I can see a couple have come through before we wrap up. So the first question, and I think this touches back on what you were mentioning a little bit earlier, Richard. When an auditor asks how AI has touched a piece of labeling, what do you actually need to be able to show them? Have either of you gone through that process at the moment and feel comfortable answering that?
Well, I mean, I have not gone through that specific question with an auditor, but one thing to keep in mind is, at least the way things are set up today, most of the content is released through a PLM, and then that would be the source of truth for your audit. So maybe it's a PDF file. It might be within your PLM, or on a website. But I would say that if you are trying to prove that the AI, that the quality is in place, that you are using the same quality steps, that should be incorporated into your quality system before you start releasing AI content. So, you'd have a new paradigm to address AI generated content. That's my take. Maybe Laurie has some other insights here.
Yeah, no, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. Is that you have a mechanism to ensure quality output, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would have a way to demonstrate that it's been appropriately reviewed, approved, and released, and it meets your quality standards. And that's what I would show, right?
Great, thank you both. That actually leads us quite nicely onto maybe the next question, which is how do I make the case to the leadership team to crawl, walk, run approach? Okay, so let's walk before you can run. When they're expected maybe big savings this quarter. I think, Laurie, maybe should we start with you? That I don't know whether that comes back to your story and your experience.
So I would want to know first what type of savings you're looking for this quarter. You'd want to define what savings you're trying to deliver so that you know what goal you're trying to meet, right? So are you trying to first meet that, are you looking for cost savings or time savings? And then what can you deliver in quarter? So if it's cost savings, then what are some AI based tools or processes, productivity enhancements that you can use AI for that could help get you closer to that goal, that could help move the needle. It doesn't have to be huge necessarily or a transformation, right? So you could set that crawl goal and then the walk for the next quarter or the next year, and then run is further down the road. And that's, again, that's really what I would think about doing. And it's sort of what my team's been working towards, where we have really, really huge aspirational goals.
Yeah.
But we have smaller incremental goals. And, we talked about, AI-based workflows, or where we can put AI into tooling. But you can also, think about how can AI help with your productivity. Like, we have on my team some writers who are experimenting with some tools as like a peer review partner. So it's your first pass peer review, right? And could that help with your productivity in generating a draft, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, what are some creative out of the box ways that it could help with achieving, your delivery metrics or something like that?
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. We have one last question before we can move on to closing. And I think this maybe touches back on what you were mentioning before, Richard. So we're a small team and leadership wants to see AI this year. If I can only fix one thing first, the content foundation or the tooling, what would actually move needles? What would your recommendation be?
I would look at the content first. And
Yep.
the tooling is something that could come later. That's my take. And Laurie, do you feel the same way?
I do. I mean, your tooling is probably, especially if you're looking at ground up tooling, that's RFI, RFP. It's going to be a longer term engagement, and it's potentially a lot of resource
Yep.
allocation as well, time, money, people. So your content you can address more directly.
Great.
Yeah, and
Thank
there are
you.
groups also that could help you, like, get a jump start with that do this type of thing. I mean, they're especially in the content management world, there's that. But I also think that it's good to take an assessment of your data, like how much content do you have, and then you can start figuring out, like, what's realistic to do. Maybe it's a subset of that, then you set, that applies to the previous question as well. Like you can make a case for something smaller, maybe a pilot, or setting aside, maybe it's only one team member to focus on this if you have a really small team. But just looking at what's out there, and that can guide you, inform you quite a bit. A lot of the time, it becomes this amorphous thing if you don't know, what you're working with. And once you do, it then becomes more of like breaking it down, and you can use methodologies that have been proven within our industry as well, like a Six Sigma Lean approach or something like that.
No, brilliant. Thank you. So we have just a couple of minutes left. So maybe one closing out statement from each of you. If a member of the audience were to reach out to you tomorrow to ask for some advice or some benchmarking, what is maybe in 1 or 2 sentences the thing that everyone here that you would recommend that they should go and check or to do starting maybe tomorrow in their organization? Let's start with Richard.
Okay, sure. I would say strategy. Look at your strategy. Treat like your organization, your labeling organization, as it is a part of the critical path. And what is your strategy for content? What is your strategy for your team dynamic, your org, and what's your vendor strategy? And if you lay out those 3, you'll have a path, that you can follow. And it might be a multi-year path, but that's also a path that you can start selling to leadership. Because in my experience, although labeling is critical, it's regulated, it's part of the critical path, so you can't sell product without it, there's still a lot of selling that needs to take place. I think that the questions allude to that, the internal selling of the services. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you, Richard. And Laurie?
You touched at the very end on something that we've been working on very diligently within my group recently, which is thinking about product labeling as not only critical for our registrations and for getting us into market and required for all of our products, but it is also sales enablement, right? So market expansion and sales enablement is a core core function of our product labeling. So it really is part of what we do, I think that's part of our job and part of our strategy as we build out all of this, our content strategy, our AI strategy too, is to think about how we enable product sales and market expansion as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Laurie.
Yep.
So to the audience, hopefully you're leaving today with some clear direction on potential next steps to take. Rather than a specific product or a specific solution, but to go back to what Laurie and Richard were both saying, then maybe more strategy. And when it comes to AI, when it comes to content, as we've said throughout today's webinar, starting where the risk is low, build some proof, build some confidence, and then climb towards maybe the higher risk content, rather than judging our position in a vacuum. And then, of course, benchmark. So ask the people who you see across the organizations, across the industry, peers, and also don't forget about your strategic partners as well. From our point of view, we work exclusively with life science teams. We run exactly this kind of benchmarking conversation. So feel free to reach out to myself as well if you're interested in seeing what we could do from the vendor perspective. But finally, Laurie and Richard, thank you very much for participating today, sharing your knowledge and your experience. It has been invaluable to the audience. And to the audience, thank you again for spending the last hour with us. I hope you found it useful. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.